go over some of my paper that I wrote a number of years ago, and then I'm going to move into some of the things that I'm interested in now that I did so you just bear with me. I have to use my notes because for a variety of reasons my memory isn't great. And anyways, I just want to launch out here. I wanted first just to say how happy I am to be here. I really think that this is a great opportunity. I want to thank all my colleagues, the medical community, everybody who organized this, all of you here. So I'm really glad to be in Gilman again. I was here back in the day. I think the last concert I saw was the Dicks, so that could probably be in any case, also I just wanted to say that the Legion of Steel title really resonates a lot with me. I came in to black metal through the band Marduk during the Legion years. So I think that's kind of, I just want to share that with you. It's just as an aside, this is an image of the abstract expressionist painter Mark Rothko. So he committed suicide, I believe, in 1970. So I wanted to just include him as a backdrop to the part of the presentation. So again, if you just bear with me, I'm going to read notes. I'll do the best that I can. Okay, so my paper's title is called Open a Vein, Suicidal Black Metal and Enlightenment. And what I want to do is just start with a quote from Albert Camus from his book, The Myth of Sisyphus. There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. A few years ago, my exploratory essay, Open a Vein, Suicidal Black Metal and Enlightenment, was published in the inaugural issue of Hellbeat, a journal of black metal theory. So I just want to give a shout out to them, and I'm very happy that they accepted my paper. In that paper, I referenced 3 bands that, have been associated with that particular genre. Shining, I Shall Become, and Make a Change, Kill Yourself. I consider my piece to be a conceptual map of the terrain of suicidal black metal. And in particular, 3 topics of discussion that are parts of the conversation of suicidologists. I don't consider myself a suicidologist. And so these topics, amongst others, are suicide for self-knowledge, wisdom, and purpose. This is the transition here. Accounts of enlightenment are infused with transcendental and ecstatic language. For example, Evelyn Underhill, in her book Mysticism, introduces terms such as absolute reality, the transcendental world, and undifferentiated life. Aldous Huxley, in The Doors of Perception, writes of the clear light of the void. Other expressions use light metaphors such as to see the light, to gaze on 10 suns shining, to be surrounded in white light, to be guided by the light, or to encounter whitening, flashing, ebbing light. So although Shining's vocalist, Nicolas Gavarth, denies any specific religious topics in the band's music, I was struck by his claims that he started to explore destroying himself at an early age, quote, in order to break all the borders and to fuck myself up to get to a higher level. This relates to many hierarchically organized spiritual traditions where a person strives to attain enlightenment in stages, often through a series of particular practices or exercises which may involve self-inflicted pain, self-denial, and self-torture. The drive to kill oneself, is really a demand for the encounter with absolute reality, a demand for a profound overthrow of daily life. So in the paper I go on and I try to make the connection between 3 different spiritual traditions, Hindu, Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. And these are 3 religions that I'm very familiar with. These examples, the examples that I chose are, I made a discussion of the monk. You probably are familiar with this image, 1963, this Thich Nhat Hanh, he immolated himself in protest of the Yemen regime in Saigon. I had carried this image around for years, and so in the course of writing this paper, I felt very strongly about trying to honor him in my writing in some way. So anyways, For Christianity, there's Jesus Christ himself, and I focused on traditional accounts of the lives of the saints, in particular, Saint Simeon Stylites, who was a pillar hermit who stood on top of a 60-foot pillar for a year, while his other leg blew up into this huge expanded leg filled with worms and pus. So he sets an example for chronic suicide as a pathogen in life. My research led me into the world of suicide bombers. If you change the image. Thanks. This, in particular, the suicidal martyr is called Shaheed in Arabic. This woman isn't the one I'm going to quote in a second, but she is one of the first women who was a suicide bomber for the group Hamas. Some of you may be familiar with that. Okay, so just to go back, the suicidal martyrs, called shaheeds from Hamas, enlist as sacrificial soldiers in order to take their place in the roster of great martyrs who meet together in paradise and who offer themselves as role models for others. Shafika, this is from the books that I researched. Shafika, a failed suicide bomber, explains that there is a feeling of renewal and clarity by overcoming the natural fear of death. She explains, it took me a long time to decide. It was wonderful to say goodbye to life. I felt like I was up in the clouds from the moment I knew I was going to be a Shahida. Frank Dumasi, in his book, The Enigma of the Suicide Bomber, a psychoanalytic essay, quotes Yasmina Khadri's book, The Attack. There's no worse cataclysm than humiliation. It's an evil beyond measure. It takes away your taste for life. And until you die, you have only one idea in your head. How can I come to a worthy end after living miserable and blind and naked? I believe these themes are reflected in Suicidal Black Metal. The sentiment is echoed in Chinese lyrics through quarters of the Russians. I'm just going to read the lyric, just bear with me. Slowly passing the oppressed, innocent sons and daughters lost, trembling in the bottomless depths of darkness, successfully failing in their search, to search the light, to search salvation. Okay, so my recent research, I feel, is a trajectory as a result of some of the things that I explored in this paper. So I become more involved in understanding the motivations of suicide bombers, and I want to learn more about their lives and their deaths. In particular, I'm interested in the use of children for suicide bombing missions. We have examples of this with the child suicide bombers being used by the militant Islamist group Boko Haram, based in Nigeria and Chad, who have declared alliance to the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. They're also known as ISIL or ISIS. And then you have the image, if you will. You may remember last year's media coverage of Boko Haram's abduction of 63 school-age girls. And there's some evidence that suggests that the 60 who are not, that managed to escape have now been enlisted as suicide bombers. And in fact, since February of this year, there have been monthly attacks using children. One as recently as last Sunday, October 11th. And those were two girls between the ages of 13 and 17. They carried out suicide bombings in Cameroon Village. Anyways, I mentioned this because I feel that I'm amongst my community. And as many of the conversations that happened today, I feel like that one of the benefits of being in this community is that we're able to look at the shit and the terror of life, and we're able to talk about it and express our outrage and anger. And I just want to say that I feel really, really good for that, and I really deeply appreciate you all. When I teach, and one of my students, when he found out that I wrote about suicidal black metal, he said, "You delve in the dark. Can I do that?" So we talked a little bit about that, as like getting permission about being able to explore these topics. I don't advocate suicide, but I do think the tropes and themes of suicidal black metal are a vital meditation on all the manifestations of the suicide question. Writing my paper really led me into some profoundly disturbing topics, but I feel that because of it, I've become a much more aware person, and I'm grateful for it. I just want to close with an image because this came out, I think, this year. It's an image from Diarra's Murders. This was a censored cover that they made. Again, it was taken in, they weren't allowed to publish it. And I wanted to, if I can get it together here, I wanted just to read you the quote. They had a statement about this particular album cover, that this image is a representation, a symbol for a child for every religion that has indoctrinated the young and disadvantaged and sent them off to war and bloody death without cause or reason. This is for them. That's it.
Is your paper available?
Yeah, it's available online. The magazine, held the Gerald Black Belt period.
It's in, okay.
It was cool because this was the first issue. So, anyways, they're doing more work and they have continuing publish. It's published online and even the magazine's published online. And we have access to it.
Yeah, as soon as I answered that question, well, you're like completely out of it from doing the conference because you already know it's available. That's great, yeah.
I'm sorry, it's a downloadable PDF.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Yeah, it is.
You said it's on, it's called Helvet?
Yeah, Helvet.
Yeah, after the old shop that Mayhem used to have.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then being held, or
Thank you.
being held.
Oh,
My
yeah.
Wi-Fi couldn't handle at home. And then, so I actually, sorry, I have a question for you. This is perfect because I'm following you and posting this, talking about emerging black metal. Is emerging black metal your preferred genre, subgenre of metal?
I know this is such a cool question. God, I feel like I'll drift off into like analogies about me or something. Long answer is I found it, I identify as an artist and writer, so I found that I was approaching this as from that creative draw. It manifested in part in response to the call for paper, so I found myself growing into that. So I don't feel identified with particular scholarship. But I think because of my own love and interest and questions about a lot of the topics that are in the paper, that helped me frame it. Yeah. Yes.
I'm also really interested in suicide prevention, but I can't really talk about it with my students even though they're adults because of the potential major issues with my university. I'm just wondering how you approach it when you talk with your students, from what angle, how much background you need to give them. I'm just basically fishing for some tips.
Okay, I don't have to offer that. I teach an undergraduate writing course in the Department of Art and Art History at San Jose State University. And I'm teaching a course that nobody wants to teach. It's kind of like this last-ditch effort for the university to graduate students with some level of writing skills. Sorry, that sounds snarky. So what I'm doing, because I have a certain level of requirements that I have to have for the university, and one of them is writing a research paper. So I think you talked about this in your talk, and you said that a lot of times, and I think a few other of you talked about that students, they approach the research paper and they feel constricted, there's academic voice. Anyways, what I try to do is, one, I offer my text as a way for them to maybe break out of the traditional academic format, even though they're engaging in that within the institution. I also use it as a way to reveal my process so that I can connect with them better, to show them, we all have like problems. So I haul out all my research and I talk about it to connect with them. But I really don't give them any preparation. I leave it as a surprise because I feel that way at some point I can capture their attention. And then I also use it, as a way to, I project my text, and I use it as a way to talk about how to write how to write an essay, and then also how to use Chicago manuals.
So that's not what I was asking.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I should have been more clear. What I mean is I'm to stay away from this kind of genre because of the potential issues that I'm propagating suicide.
Yes.
Which is why I stay away from this genre in classes because that's how my students might see it, then it goes to my parents, and it goes to my esteemed students, and so on and so on. So I'm just wondering, like, do you encounter issues with that? How do you deal with them? Do you have to kind of frame this kind of music in a way that speaks to students that you're not doing that, or that they don't understand it as that?
The students, one, university, they're not particularly invested in what I'm presenting in class. They're not involved so I can, in ways, I can do whatever I want and take the risk. So that's what I do, I just take the risk. And two, I've never had any students who felt, say, threatened by it. It may be if there was the satanic, because in my essay I talk a little, I have, flashing words as a satanic. They haven't been outright offended, or in fact, sometimes it opens up conversations about suicide in families, other people's struggles with suicide. So, yeah, but in the context of the academia, right, to be taken seriously about this paper, I found it very difficult. See all this.
I have some experience with that too. I've been teaching a class on death and dying for several years now. I also teach a sociology of religion course. And in my death and dying course, we actually spend 2 weeks in suicide. And we look at suicide ideation in Japan because they're within the last 5 or so years, they've been actually trying to approach it as a mental health issue so that they can actually give people help, at least offer it. In terms of perspectives, and then we watch a Vice documentary on the suicide forest, and then we do a week, we study it in the States, so we watch Brig End, which of course is in the States, it's about Brig End in Wales, and then we also watch The Bridge, which is about people jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. Brilliant film. And as a department in sociology, we all talked about, and I think Kevin, this came up for us in grad school, right? Where we talk about how do you approach these controversial, for lack of a better word, topics. And as a department, we decided we didn't want to censor ourselves. We didn't want to ask for permission, because the second you ask for permission, people are interested in it, right? We don't want to ask if it's okay to do this. We actually created a boilerplate in our syllabi. So everybody's syllabus basically has the same boilerplate, which is in sociology or in cultural studies, because I teach in various departments, or ethnic studies, whatever, it's the same thing. In these departments, and in this field, we talk about subjects that might make you uncomfortable. And usually I tell students on day one, you're taking a class in death and dying. Or my religion class, I spend 2 weeks on black metal. And I'm like, this is what we're going to study. This is not a class on the big five religions. This is a class on the phenomenology of belief. And I make that very explicit in those 2 courses and these subjects. And so you just sort of just put it out there as a disclaimer. You don't ask for permission, you don't give them warnings, but just if you need to understand that this is what we're doing. And we do give students permission to walk out of the room, right? If this makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to watch the film, but you're responsible for it. So you need to go read articles and interviews with the filmmakers and at least get the gist of what it's about. That's how we've approached it. I think that in university settings with topics like this, if you go ask if it's okay if you talk about suicide, you're opening something you don't want to enter. So you just do it with not, just, this is what we're going to do.
We
Yeah.
just had a number of suicides last year, and we already had 2 this year.
So that might be a reason to actually explicitly address it in the classroom then.
And our university is very strict in terms of how we address the topics.
Interesting. Hopefully you use their guidelines and just do it, right?
It's not just, while we're on the topic of, black metal specifically, it's not just suicide, but when you start talking about black metal specifically, this is a style of metal that has a lot of extremely taboo topics. When you explore it, vicious hatred of Christianity, all this church burnings in Norway back in the 90s, and then there's a prominent fascist, far right strain of black metal. So, I mean, it's not just suicide. When you start talking about just black metal, you will start talking about some really, dodgy subjects.
Sure.
I love Future, my favorite.
I
My favorite suicidal ideation
Right.
man. So I'm actually you for dates and elements, so like you, I work in a field where kids are telling you their trauma all the time. They constantly go home and listen to metal, which is about doing this stuff, or I'll watch like hella depressing documentaries or things like that, and no one understands why I do that after just don't understand why I do that. So do people ask you all the time, like, why do you do this? And what's your response to them to shut them up? Because I want to do that too. I'm not people that ask me those things.
One answer is, okay, I'm trying, I say like I was here, that it's a really important topic for me personally, and so I feel it's important. I just try to be open and vulnerable, I guess, is something really cheesy. Try not to manage it from the point of view of like a professor, from a personal point of view. And also be open that if they want to ask me personal questions, in that context, I just go for it. Does that answer?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Alex Volnick said I was too polite, so I'm trying to get mean.
I was trying to be really gentle.
People try to be mean.
It's really interesting stuff. But I wanted to sort of focus on the last thing where you make it explicit to abandon what they're saying. And the contrast with the other things that you were showing us, because in some ways, despite the fact that this was very controversial, this narrative fits in to the arguments that people make about people who choose to go and to ISIS. So, for example, in the UK, the discourse that we have is that this is teenagers.
Yeah.
These people were seduced on the internet, they were indoctrinated. There's no idea that there's a sense in which I want to kill myself or potentially kill myself or I'm fighting, whatever it is I'm doing, as a positive act against oppression. So, so the monk immolating himself is saying, I'm doing this symbolically to tell you something. Right? And then, a suicide bomber who's an adult, that woman said, my life is misery, I'm depressed, and this is a symbolic end where I'm actually being able to do something to kind of make my life worth something, like it's something death. So I just wonder how that works in terms of this, because this in a way is very conventional what they're saying, despite the fact that it looks, shocking and wrong.
Right.
That, kids are indoctrinated. So the question is really the age thing, isn't it? When does somebody have the right to say, I know what I'm doing? I understand the politics, that what your military interventions have created this movement, and I want to do something about it. It seems to me that we're not listening to young people who do that. Why they want to do it, and they're doing it because they actually believe that what they're doing is right. So I guess that was a long question.
I know, with children, that's why I really invested in that whole idea of the boundary between indoctrination and choice. That one who was that young girl, she was actually counseled that she escaped, she played along and she escaped.
Yeah, sometimes they lock the explosives onto the bodies so they can't get out of anything.
So I met that little girl.
Yeah. I think it was from Boko Haram, that young girl, yes.
It's really, I have to comment to kind of your question about talking about it. And, I think it's so important we do talk about it, because are we not going to talk about Romeo and Juliet? Is that a suicide in it? Are we not going to talk about Anna Karenina or the other great books of literature or music? It's so important that dialogue is open.
So they're not in that taboo area, right? As soon as you bring in black metal, death metal, or your students going to react to it immediately, that's in a different frame of mind.
We had some problems with university in terms of operative things, and not with black metal, it's suicide. Salome was a big murder scene and stuff. And some students really reacted against it, did not talk about it. That's what I'm saying, the controversy exists in so many different levels. I don't know, it's a whole thing for us.
I got the signal.
All right.
Thank you very much.
presentation. Our last presentation is a photo journal, photo essay from Kelly Black, and that will lead us into the evening. We'll have a couple hours break before you come back for the show. So just give me a second to set this up.